Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games. This is the finals of one of our FNMs. Nick picking up Titan Post for the first time. Grabbed a bunch of those cards with store credit. And had almost the entire deck for him. Actually borrowing a Elvish Reclaimer from Tom on the other side of the table. He is on Dreadstill. Team Amethyst. Specialty. Once upon a time, finding Elvish Reclaimer. Maybe the actual version that was lent to him. Tom knows that might be one of the only cards that Force of Will actually work against in this deck. Reclaimer, of course, can find Cavern of Souls and make any future creatures uncounterable. Menace in its own right, turning every land in the deck into a potential Cloud Post. For those unfamiliar, don't worry, we'll get to that. Exactly how inevitable this deck is when left unchecked. Green Sun Zenith, finding the Elvish Reclaimer. And step one accomplished. He's going to be able to convert all of these lands into something better as time goes. Wasteland, one of the best possible cards against this deck. But with that Elvish Reclaimer out, makes the timing very difficult. Anytime that you attempt to waste a non-basic, they can potentially respond by sacrificing it to get a different or even better one. Or the same. Just any one out of the deck, any land. Green Sun Zenith. Incredibly good in Titan Posts, as we saw. You can grab a Elvish Reclaimer on turn 2 and set up just a series of unfortunate events for your opponent. Or as a late game, it is really just game over. You can grab Primeval Titan, and that generally spells doom for your opponent. You have an end step dress down here on turn 2. Tom has a pair of 3 Dreadnoughts. 3 Dreadnoughts, all under the protection of dress down. Those, wow. Boseiju would have been an excellent response to that if he had a Boseiju to be able to destroy the dress down. That would have been quite the line. Elvish Reclaimer cannot help there. Getting Boseiju into play, not useful. You'd have to channel it from your hand. It's like Nick is going to be getting rid of this Maze of It. It is not going to be sufficient. Maze doesn't tap for mana, though, so I think he's got to tap both of these lands. Maze of It, solid versus a single Dreadnought. Against 3 of them. That simply will not do. Grabs a Cloud Post. Ramping a little bit here. Let's see what he can do with it. Typically, Glimmer Post can get you out of range of many combat situations, buy you an extra turn, gaining 1 or 2 life. Just a few life over a couple of turns can be the difference between just straight up dying on the spot. But here, we're talking huge chunks, 36 damage incoming. And Nick is searching. Got to be for Glacial Chasm. Not Blast Zone, by the way. Put that in the slideshow as a reminder of how badly this could have gone, but Tom, aware of the fact that Nick not running Blast Zone in his main deck at least. So Glacial Chasm it is. That prevents all of the damage here. Cumulative upkeep. Going to be 2, then 4, 6, 8. Over 4 turns, that'll be 20. It's kind of the cap here. Well, we actually had a point of life gained off of Glimmer Post, so can actually stick around till that cumulative upkeep gets to 10. Of course, you can actually rotate out with your Elvish Reclaimer to make a copy of Glacial Chasm as well. So this could be a while. Tom, realistically, has quite a bit of waiting to do. Even with Wasteland, it's not an easy solution as you try and fire a Wasteland at the Glacial Chasm. It can potentially just go get a Vesuva and copy it, sacrifice the Glacial Chasm to the Wasteland. Gets a Dark Depths. This is not great news. Elvish Reclaimer can pull this combo together while hiding behind the Glacial Chasm. At that point, Wasteland would be really good. So if he can hold on to Wasteland, if he can find one, then potentially have it on board for the time when Nick goes to make a copy of Dark Depths with his Thespian stage. At that point, shape. Blowing up the Thespian stage once it's become a copy of Dark Depths would set Nick way, way, way back. Still, these 3 Dreadnoughts standing idly by. Yavimaya now allowing Glacial Chasm to tap 4 mana. Thespian stage has arrived on the scene. Another dress down also would be very helpful, as that would give Merit Lage, or take away Merit Lage's flying, I should say, along with the Indestructible. So these Dreadnoughts would absolutely eat Merit Lage's lunch. Dress down becomes part of this equation. 9 life. Here we go, making a 20/20 during the end step. Leave here, Tom. We can see he has Stifle in hand, trying to figure out if there's any useful play here with Stifle. So he can actually stop the Thespian stage becoming a copy. That will just delay the inevitable. And in this situation, that might be helpful if he draws another Stifle. Eventually drag this out long enough that Glacial Chasm's protection goes away. But this is during the end step. He is just going to Stifle. So the other unfortunate way that you can use Stifle is if you try and use it after Thespian stage has become a copy of Dark Depths. So Dark Depths will, based off of the legend rule, go to the graveyard. And your Thespian stage will be a Dark Depths with 0 counters on it, with a state trigger on the stack. Because it has no counters, you're supposed to sacrifice it and get a 20/20. But that action does actually use the stack, so the trigger is placed on the stack, and it won't go back on the stack as long as there's a copy of that trigger. So that's the perfect time to wasteland the Thespian stage. But if you do try and stifle it, you will successfully stifle that instance of the trigger. But as soon as a player gains priority, that trigger will be placed back on the stack because the Dark Depths has no counters on it. And it'll attempt again to make a 20/20. So Stifle, you could have a million Stifles in your hand with Omniscience in play. You're just not going to be able to stop the Dark Depths from making a Merit Lage. No matter how many times you stifle that trigger, it'll just keep popping back up one at a time. We see a Glimmer Post adding a little bit of life. Interesting situation. So Nick probably should have made a 20/20 before Tom drew a card. If he drew a Stifle there, I think he actually would have been fine. Also before Tom could make a Wasteland. So that was actually fairly dangerous. Tom had some live draws there that could have really screwed everything up for Nick. But again, this is his first time playing and can be instructive for everybody. We see Standstill coming out of the deck, largely because Titan Post can win without even casting a spell as early as turn 3. If you just go Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, Yavimaya, that's a turn 3 20/20, and you haven't even played a spell yet. So Standstill at among its weakest in this type of matchup. That and Dredge, matches where people do not have to play a spell to win the game or even just further their game plan, Standstill's not going to be ideal. End of the day there, Glimmer Post did give Nick some breathing room. Just that extra point of life make a huge difference. Multiple Glimmer Posts over the course of a game can really push things way out of range. By the time you get to, your 3rd and 4th Glimmer Post in conjunction with Cloud Post, I mean, you're potentially gaining, 20 life. I've seen. Certainly played a lot of Titan Post over the years. Favorite era was blue-green builds with Sensei's top, though there are some builds that I played with Uro and Brainstorm. Uro was first printed. It was an interesting card. Bolos was in there as well. The One Ring, though, I think really shifted the entire archetype and made it immediately viable. It's not quite a Thassa's Oracle level printing for Cephalid Breakfast, but having this 4 casting cost artifact in a deck that so easily generates colorless mana is just remarkable. I've seen already in the limited amount of times it's seen play in the store, players drag out situations until they just inevitably win with Emrakul. Being able to hide behind the One Ring and Glacial Chasms is really difficult to break on through. All damage being prevented. Timeless Dragon. Finding a plateau. Having the option to play here. Kind of hoping to be a little bit faster. And the real damage from Titan Post decks tends to be just the building of its mana base. I mean, that's either assembling Dark Depths or just having a bunch of Cloud Posts. Being able to inevitably hardcast things like Emrakul or Ulamog. You have a crop rotation in response to Wasteland. A Cloud Post. Wasteland's such a key card. I don't enjoy that being fired off when there's any potential to respond with a crop rotation. I mean, that feels bad to me. Potentially countering very best card. And another crop rotation. Wow. All right, so just a couple of crop rotations back to back. This one grabs Cloud Post. On a time. Kicking off. I think I might have actually kicked off both games. Really an interesting card. Finding your Cloud Post or Glimmer Posts, your whatever locust you might be looking for. Yavimaya, Dark Depths. So many good lands. And then, of course, creatures in the deck are extremely important. Now we have a Pithing Needle, probably stopping Wasteland, along with the One Ring. And this has been just a huge turn. Makes this 4/4 zombie dragon feel really inconsequential. Timeless Dragon, the front side. A 5/5. If you plane cycle it, you can bring it out of the bin. Really played because you can do this all underneath a standstill. And here we have a Stifle on the Prime Times ETB trigger. Stifle delaying the inevitable. If this guy turns sideways, it is just going to be over anyways. Short order. What you're afraid of is them grabbing Emrakul off of Eye of Ugin. Let's see if he might just have enough mana to just make this happen now. Yeah, Cloud Post and Eye of Ugin. Or each of those Cloud Posts tapping for what looks like 4 mana. And once he attacks with the next Prime Time, that'll have them each tap for 6. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's just going to be able to... Oh, and he's got a Cloud Post from hand. This is just wild. He's going to be tapping like each of those Cloud Posts for like 7 mana. You have a play to make right now. That's even worse news. Green Sun Zenith for a second Prime Time. Oh my goodness, going so far over the top. Just unbelievable. Grabbing Thespian Stage in Dark Depths. So he's going to be able to grab an Emrakul and make a 20/20 Merit Lage. At this point, I guess the question is which one is scarier? The Emrakul annihilating the entire mana base. That Merit Lage potentially just taking out the remainder of your life. Yeah, this is just... Andy's at 12. At least it's a quick death. He can't actually delay this, even if he sacrifices his whole mana base and blocks the Merit Lage. Emrakul's damage will be lethal. This One Ring just drawing fistfuls of cards. This is just hilarious. Prime Time. We are just essentially seeing how out of control Titan Post can get. Blocking the Prime Time, but he's still going to be able to get all of his Cloud Posts in play. Deck was previously called 12 Post because it had 4 Cloud Posts, 4 Vesuva, 4 Glimmer Posts. I believe they've cut down on some number of Vesuvas in recent builds. I'd have to take a look, but the inclusion of Thespian Stage also can make additional Locusts. So, yeah, that is just absolute madness. Those 12/12s, nothing compared to the other side of the board. Could spot you a couple of 12/12s and it wouldn't matter in that situation. As Nick takes it down, first time playing Titan Post.